Initial Thoughts is a spoiler-free movie review series. All opinions are my own. Hi everyone, welcome back to Initial Thoughts, a series in which we talk about films as and when they are released. Today's film we're talking about is Scream 6, which is directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett and stars Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega and Courtney Cox. So just over a year ago, in probably the shortest time span from one film being made to the sequel coming out, we had January of 2022, we had Scream 5, which came a lot of years after Scream 4 and was a completely new set of characters. Of course, there was the legacy characters returning, and it was a surprisingly good time. There's an Initial Thoughts video on the channel for that, as you probably have seen already if you've not checked that out, but that was something that it was a bit of a surprise for me, because around that time we had things like The Matrix Resurrections and The King's Man. It was around that time when we had either prequels or sequels or big franchises getting new installments with legacy characters. And actually, in that mix of, and even something like Jurassic World Dominion, where a lot of these things, they never really had the payoff that they deserved, or that we had all hoped for, with all these big franchises getting new brand spanking new installments. But then, in the midst of all that, and actually maybe forgotten to a lot of people, and including myself actually, I have to admit, it was in that span of things where you kind of just categorize them all as, okay, well they did this thing where they brought back all these big franchises, and nearly every movie didn't really do them justice. But in amongst that, we had Scream 5. Scream 5 was actually a real surprise to me, and I think, if I remember correctly, it was my favourite of the franchise. Maybe tied with the first film, obviously because of its cultural significance, its importance in the 90s. The first Scream obviously holds a place in a lot of horror fans' hearts, and it just is a great film for what it is. But it is a little bit dated, where Scream 5 was like a very much a keeping with the times sequel, requel, isn't that the term they kept using? Maybe to an irritating amount in the movie. But Scream 5 was a genuine surprise, and I actually enjoyed it a lot. So when I heard that Scream 6 was coming out, I wasn't totally adverse to the idea, and then I heard it was coming out in like a year's time. As I say, January 2022, and then March of 2023 we have the sequel. It probably is the shortest turnover of a film to a film, a sequel to a sequel. And add to that, you have, the similar cast returning, people like Melissa Barrera, who was a surprisingly good, what you would call final girl, with her sister, Jenna Ortega, who of course is one of the most popular actresses in Hollywood today, with obviously her starring in Wednesday, the Netflix series, and X, and a lot of other things. So she really has become one of these horror icons, to an extent. So having her already been involved in Scream 5 before that meteoric rise that she's had in this last, say, 6 to 9 months has certainly brought her the weight of her performances from the fifth film, which she was kind of in as a bit part character to some extent. I remember her getting attacked at the start of the film and then being in a hospital for a large majority of it. So that was, yes, it was played into the story, and she wasn't exactly like a cameo, it was certainly a role. But certainly she is more front and centre in this film, in Scream 6, alongside her sister, and that's the main dynamic, along with a few of the other returning characters that did survive the previous film, along with Courtney Cox. But that brings me to maybe my skepticism coming into this, which was, and I chatted there a little bit about all these big franchises coming back with all the legacy actors. This had a big omission, two big omissions. First, of course, is David Arquette, due to his character's fate in the fifth film. I'm sure if you haven't seen the film, you can work out what that is. He was not in this film, and he is a miss. Him as Dewey in all the Scream films, or the Scream films where he does add a lot, and he certainly is a staple of the franchise. But the other one, and of course the most significant one, is Sidney Prescott, which is Neve Campbell. And did not have her, and I know there was a little bit of controversy where she felt she wasn't getting paid what she was worth, and I mean, she is the poster girl for Scream. She's nearly as iconic as the Ghostface mask in some ways, and is synonymous with the franchise. So for her not to be felt that she was offered a level of her worth, that was a shame when I heard that, I have to say. But again, I didn't go into this going, it is a necessity to have these characters. I mean, I chatted very recently about Creed 3, which didn't have Sylvester Stallone, and again, that's interesting in what is a Rocky spin-off, and it's quite similar dynamic. But in that film, there wasn't a real necessity for Sylvester Stallone. In this film, it kind of is the same. There wasn't a real necessity for Neve Campbell. And Courtney Cox, and for her role in this, it's maybe her, bar maybe the first or second film, this is probably her most prominent role in a Scream film. And she gives a lot. I think Courtney Cox, obviously for things like Friends all those years ago, for her still to be given in this kind of performance, or even in the first Scream film, which is 30 years ago now, almost 30 years ago, for her still to be as committed to this franchise now as she was then, it says a lot about her and her character and, her acting prowess, if that's the right terminology for that. But there certainly is a new era in for Scream. These new set of characters, as I mentioned, the two sisters dynamic, plus this kind of family/friend group they have. They all seem very close, and it's probably the most enjoyable set of characters in the Scream franchise as a whole. And I include that all the way back to the first film, second, third, fourth. I mean, in all of them, it's kind of these core characters in the fifth and sixth installment, I think, are the most enjoyable, and probably the characters you would root for the most. Yes, they still make stupid decisions, and there's a few things in Scream 6, a little bit like in Scream 5, but a lot more were evident in this, which was maybe my two major gripes with this film, which I want to start with, which is there's people that get shot and stabbed, and they get maimed, and they're in a very bad way, but everybody can just survive. It's kind of just pick and choose. That person, no matter what injury they've had, whatever injury they've been hit by. And don't get me wrong, there is gory violence in this. They don't really dial back. It does warrant the 18 rating that it got here in the UK. But it does feel a little bit like it doesn't... Even if someone gets stabbed, or like what you would class as brutally killed in this movie, or any of the Scream films, it does feel that if the scriptwriters want it, they can come back. It doesn't really... And listen, that doesn't really apply just to Scream. That applies to so many franchises that, conveniently someone survived off screen or whatever the case may be. But that is something that was a bit of a gripe with this. Another gripe was... There was a few instances in Scream 6. Again, I think this did happen in the previous film too, so it's not maybe directed solely at this film. And it probably applies to the franchise as a whole. But there is that kind of silly decision-making by our protagonists in the film. Some opportunities where maybe a character has the enemy on the ground, but goes, right, we gotta run! You're like, no, go and finish the job, and don't conveniently run away and give them a chance to recover. Again, that's nitpicking something that is a horror movie trope that is as old as time. So that's not the be-all and end-all for me. And I didn't go into Scream expecting, an Oscar-worthy film. But did I enjoy Scream 6? And where did I put it in my in my order of enjoyment for the Scream films? Scream 6 is good. I was pleasantly surprised by this film. Did I love it as much as Scream 5? I didn't. Did I love it as much as the original because of the cultural significance? I don't think so either. But I would certainly... I would definitely put it as my third favourite Scream film. Definitely above 2 and 3. I don't have any kind of loyalty or attachment to them films. They're just fine. But... And also Scream 4. Obviously this film's seen the return of Hayden Panettiere, which... that was an enjoyable return, I suppose. It probably would have been more interesting if it had been Emma Roberts' character from that film. But again, that was someone that died and would have just been brought back for generic, I survived just because I did. There's no rhyme or reason to why it happened. So, yeah, there is kind of that. And that does apply certainly to Hayden Panettiere's character too. But that was an okay addition. I suppose she did fill, to a certain extent, the gap left without Dewey or Sidney from this. But Scream 6 was enjoyable. Why was it below Scream 5? I think Scream 5 did such a great job in maybe reigniting the franchise, and I just felt that this film, this Scream film, I suppose is the best way to talk about it, which, as a Scream film, it's probably the one with the best storytelling. Is it the most engaging? I did find some parts were a little bit duller than others. You know, some of the kills were enjoyable. Some of the family, heartfelt moments between the characters was quite to a level of emotional. Like, you know, for a horror movie and something as generic as a slasher film, there was quite a lot to latch on to in the side of character development. So, in that front, it really hit a new mark in, as I say, the side of storytelling and the character building and the relationships and charisma they had with each other, especially the main two sisters, Melissa Barrera's character and Jenna Ortega's character, which both of them were an enjoyable part of Scream 5, but I thought the bond that they had was conveyed very well by the actresses in this film. So that was an addition, plus the surrounding characters were also pretty good for the most part. There wasn't any character that was over the top annoying, I felt. Which, I mean, a lot of these films usually have at least maybe 2 or 3 of them, never mind one. But yeah, Scream 6 was enjoyable. Why is it, why is it below Scream 5? I think Scream 5 was exactly what I wanted in a Scream movie. And that includes the first one. The first one was like the introduction and, you know, obviously sets the bar of what it should be. But I think Scream 5 takes the core elements of what was good in the first film and just built on it, increased it to a higher level. Whereas for Scream 6, I thought it boosted the characters more than it boosted it as a Scream film. That probably doesn't make too much sense, but I hope it does. But overall, let's get to rating time. I mean, Scream 6 was really enjoyable. It's my third favourite one. Is it as good as Scream 5? No. Scream 5 I remember giving a 7.5. So I think the fairest score is probably a 7 for Scream 6. If I was being really harsh, I could maybe bump it lower than that, but I think a 7 is warranted for this. An enjoyable time. If it's your kind of thing, I would definitely recommend it. If you've seen Scream 5 and you enjoyed it, then I think you'll enjoy this, because a lot of what's good in that film is shared and paralleled in this film, but in just a different way. And for me, it was really down to personal preference. But am I sitting here saying that Scream 5 is 10 times better film than Scream 6? No, it's just it's a different avenue that they went down. I enjoyed both films. They are, I think if I was going to rewatch the Scream franchise, I'd probably just, as I've said, I'd watch the first and then probably 5 and 6. I don't have any real... I know a lot of people live and die by these movies, and no pun intended, but they love the second and the third, and it has a special place in their heart, whereas, as I say, for me, there's good ones and there's bad ones, and for this in particular, Scream 6 is in the good category. So, we can't really knock that, can't really complain. I got basically what I wanted. I wouldn't have expected anything... Would I have expected to be better than Scream 5? I don't think so. I just think, the stars aligned for Scream 5 to be very good, and Scream 6 was just a continuation, and just a follow-on from a good story that was already being told and expanded upon. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Scream 6. And that's my review. As always, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to sit and listen to me talking about the movies. If you want to stick around, subscribe, ring the bell, leave a like, let me know you enjoyed it. And if you do, I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Before you go, here are some of my other videos. For updates and information on upcoming videos, the best place to find us is my Twitter. Much love, everyone.